Hi, this is Ali Arango of Little Guy CGI. In this tutorial, what you're going to be shown how to do is how to go from a cube and then box model up to the female character mesh that you see here. The character mesh that you're working toward is a character mesh that has good topology. That is, you can see there's evenly spaced faces. The geometry for this female character mesh is underneath 10,000 polygons. You'll be shown how to work with different modifiers to help you achieve this shape. As you work through the tutorial, I not only explain what I'm doing, I try to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. Hopefully from this tutorial, you'll be able to either box model more detail into this character mesh, or you could even use this basic female character mesh as a base mesh to sculpt from. So I hope you learn a lot from this tutorial, and thank you for viewing this tutorial. If you like the step-by-step content that I produce in making these tutorials, please give this video a like. That'll make the YouTube robots happy. If you want to support this channel even more, you can go to your upper right, and then you can go to my Patreon page and choose to support me there. Thank you. Hi, this is Ali Arango of LittleGuyCGI.com, and today I'm going to show you how to box model a female character mesh in Blender 2.81. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the upper left. We're going to go to View, Viewpoint. We're going to go to Front View. So we have our default cube. We are going to go to the upper left. We're then going to go to Edit Mode. Here in Edit Mode, what we're going to do is we're going to right-click on the cube. Then we're going to select Subdivide. Once we selected Subdivide, when you look to the lower left, you'll see the Subdivide panel. We'll click the triangle there. And where we see the number of cuts, we'll take this up to 3. When we look at the smoothness, we'll take the smoothness all the way up to 1. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to left click on nothingness to deselect. When we look to our upper left, we can select vertex select, edge select, or face select. You want to make sure you're on vertex select. When you look at our what used to be a cube here, when you look all the way to the bottom of the subdivided cube, you'll see 3 vertices, right? When you look up, you'll see 3 more vertices. You don't want to select any of these. You want to select this 3rd row of vertices here. So I'm going to left click, hold shift. When I hold shift, this allows me to select more than one vertex at a time. So now I'm letting go of shift. I selected just these 3 vertices right here. So with that done, what I'm going to do is go to View, Viewpoint, and then I'm going to go to Right. So now when we look to the upper left-hand corner, we can see we're looking at a right orthographic view. Orthographic view is kind of like a view in 3D that tries to make the 3D that you're looking at look as much like 2D as possible. A lot of times it helps to work that way. Okay, what I'm showing you here is my basic way of making a head. This is a very fast way of making a head. It works out very well for me. The reason why we have these 3 vertices selected here is we're going to pull these vertices down into a chin. To do that, we want to pull not just these vertices, but the vertices around here as well. To do that, we're going to use something called the proportional editing tool. So I'm going to press the O key. And when I press that, this icon here turned blue. This shows us that the proportional editing tool is turned on. The proportional editing tool allows you to move more than one vertex, edge, or face at a time. Okay, so with these 3 vertices selected, I'm going to press G. When I press G, the reason why I press that, a few things are going on. One, I'm going to be able to pull those vertices down. I also press G so I can see that circle. That circle is the area of influence of our proportional editing tool. So basically what's inside of that circle will be affected by the proportional editing tool. When you're working with 3D, a lot of times it helps to lock your movements. So we press G, we can press Z, and Z is going to lock our movement so we just can pull down, and this is what we want. So what you want to do is pull down. Now see how when I pull down, there's the chin is very pointy. That's what we're making now is a chin. So what I'm going to do is roll my mouse wheel, and as I increase the area of influence, you can see that chin is getting less pointy, and that's what you want. Pretty much what you see there. So you want a shape very similar to what I have on the screen now. So I'm going to left click to lock that shape in. Okay, now I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate towards the front, and we have our basic head shape right here. What we're going to do now is we have these 3 vertices still selected. We're going to left click to deselect. We're going to go to the upper left. We're going to go to face select. We're going to press C, which activates paint select. This allows us to paint faces. Very useful for when you're trying to quickly select the faces that we just selected. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select now. Okay, the reason why we selected these faces is we want to extrude this down. This is going to basically make our neck. So I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back, hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the E key to extrude. And when I press E, you can see that line pop up. That line is going to show us how this extrusion is going to happen. When I say extrusion, we're basically making new geometry. So we're just going to take this extrusion. I'm just moving my mouse, and we have our neck right there. So I'm going to left click to lock that extrusion in place. Okay, I'm going to hold them in there we go. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button, rotate the view. What we're going to do now is scale the bottom of this neck out. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to press S. We're going to press S. Actually, I want to turn off the proportional editing tool. So I'm going to press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. Now I'm going to press S again. And now I'm going to hold Shift and then press Z. So what this means is the neck is going to scale, and that's what I'm doing now, scaling. It's going to scale on every axis, think X, Y, Z, other than the Z axis, which in Blender is up and down. So then I'm going to left click. So I have the neck like this, right? And that's kind of that's how you want it, like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hold Control. While holding Control, press the right key, and then that puts a loop cut in the neck. So I'm going to roll the mouse wheel one time. That added another loop cut. I'm going to left click one time. Because I only left click one time, I can move these loop cuts. Both of those, loop cuts I have selected, I can move. I'm going to move them down slightly. Then I'm going to left click a second time to lock those loop cuts in. We still have these loop cuts selected, so we're going to press the S key. We're going to hold Shift and then press Z, just like we did previously. And now we're going to push in. And what this does is this quickly lets us get the shape of a neck. And then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them the mouse button to take a look at what we have here. We can come back and adjust the shapes later on. What we can do to make us have less of a workload is human beings are bisymmetrical creatures, and what that basically means is, for the most part, what's on one side is the same thing on the other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a mirror modifier on here, and this will allow us to speed up our workflow. So I'm going to, when you look here in the upper left, you can see we're on user perspective. We're not in an exactly orthographic perspective. So there we go. We can use this button to the right here and select that, and that puts us in a orthographic perspective. The reason why we want to be in here, user orthographic. So what we want to do is we want to be in a front orthographic perspective. There we go. See how the orthographic perspective, this line that runs down here goes, straight through. So this is a nice setup for us to easily be able to put a mirror modifier onto this model mesh that we're working on, character mesh we're working on. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make this transparent. So we're going to press Z. Then we're going to go to wireframe. The reason why we did this is going to wireframe is an easy way to not just select the front of what you see here, but also the back. We want to select the front as well as the back, so we can delete this half, then have this half replaced with the mirror modifier. So we're going to go to our upper left to where we see face select, we're going to press B for box select. We're going to left click, drag slightly past the center line, and that lets us grab this whole side of our character mesh so far. With that done, we're going to press the X button. This brings up our delete menu. We're going to select faces to delete. I'm then going to press Z, go back to solid view. I'm going to go to the right, go to what looks like a wrench, left click there, go to add modifier, left click, and then I'm going to select mirror. And what this is doing is this is mirroring off of the 3D cursor is here. However, the pivot, the origin point is here as well. So the mirror modifier is mirroring right on this origin point. So to make this side look like this side, what we can do is select, looks like a triangle with 3 circles on it. We also want to turn on this clipping. What the clipping does is makes this side stop from separating from this side here. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm trying to see these faces right here. I'm going to press C for paint select. And because I selected with these paint select, see how my circle for my paint select is going over these 4 faces. So now because we have the mirror modifier, when I selected these 4 faces, the faces were selected on the other side as well. So now I'm going to right click to come out of that paint select. Okay, and what we want to do now is I'm going to roll back, hold the mouse button to rotate the view. Now I'm going to press E to extrude again. I'm going to right click. So I have the extruding right. I just didn't pull it out. I made new geometry. I right clicked. So that new geometry is made. It's just sitting in the position that it was made in. So what we're going to do is go to the move tool. Sometimes I'll use the move tool just because it lets me know that I am extruding or moving the what I made from the extrusion straight down. So I'm going to push this straight down like this. When it comes to your proportions, you can fairly easily adjust your proportions in 3D. What we want to do is get our basic shapes here, and then once we have our basic shapes, we can adjust the proportions after that. Okay, with this here, we're going to push this down a little further. What we're going to do is we're going to hover here. We're going to hold Control, press R to put 1 loop cut in, right? We're going to roll the mouse to put another loop cut in. So then we're going to left click to lock that in, and then left click to lock that in all the way, right? So now we have this torso here divided into basically 3 sections. What we want to do is go to this face select here. We're going to hold Alt, left click. I think I want to flatten this out actually before we do this. See how there's a slight curve here? We can easily flatten this curve out by holding Alt, and then when I left click, when I hold Alt, I select this entire edge loop, right? What I can do is press S to scale on the Z axis 0, and then left click, and now that edge is flattened out. I'll do the same thing here. I'll hold Alt, left click while holding Alt, and then I'll press S to scale on the Z axis 0, and then left click, and now this is flattened out as well. Now I left click to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. Since we flatten out the rest of them, I'm going to press C. We'll flatten this out as well. So we have that geometry on the bottom, same thing, S to scale on the Z axis, and then 0 to flatten that out as well. Okay, what we're going to do now is make sure we're on face select, which we are. We're going to hold Alt and then left click on the edge here. I'm letting go of Alt. When we did that, we selected this entire row of faces here. Okay, when we're rotating the view, so I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Be aware that you can rotate your view by left clicking and dragging here. You can also zoom in and out here as well. You can pan here, as well as you saw before. We can switch to an orthographic view as well as back to perspective view here. When you are rotating your 3D viewport, right? When you want to work on an axis, this move tool is very effective because I want to push this selected geometry straight forward. So we can do that just by, using this and pushing straight forward. So what we want to do is where when you push this forward, right? Let's actually go to view, viewpoint, and then, right. This right here, you want to be lined up with the front of the face, all right? I'm gonna bring this up slightly. So you're pushing this forward. Don't push this front line past the face there, right? Then what you're gonna do is press R to rotate on the X-axis. So you want this line here to be aimed up like that, all right? Okay, now with that done, we're going to left click to deselect. What we want to do is we want to select this bottom geometry here. We're going to press C for paint select. We're then going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. Let's go to view, viewpoint, and then right. So what we want to do is push this up. So that this is, again, not going past the face. Okay, so what we're going to do now with this bottom geometry selected is we're going to press S to scale on the Y-axis, like that. Then what we're going to do is, see how this here is going past the face? We're going to pull this back like this. Then we're going to press R to rotate on the X-axis like this. So you kind of want this pointed, aimed like this direction. Now what we want to do is we want to round this out some. So we'll go to vertex select. We'll select here. Well, let's select, I'll hold shift. I right clicked, by the way. I left clicked here. And when I started to push and I didn't like what I saw, I right click. It's almost like when you right click and you're moving, it's almost like a mini kind of reset. So I'm going to hold shift and then push all of this out like this. Push this out to the side, some like that. We're going to extrude this geometry down. So for this, let's go to face select. Select here, and we're going to actually push this geometry towards each other. So in a sense, it looks like we're scaling this. We're really just using the mirror to our advantage. We are in a sense scaling it, but we're not pressing S to scale this, right? So we're going to go here. We're going to select here, pull this to the side. Don't let how strange this looks right now get to you. It's a process, all right? So I'm taking a look at this. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to select, go to face select. Select here, hold shift, select there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to press E to extrude. There's our extrusion line. We're going to bring that extrusion out like that. We're going to press S to scale this down like this. We're going to press R to rotate on the X axis like that. R to rotate on the X axis like that. Hold them the mouse button to rotate the view. We'll push this towards itself. When I say this, I mean that geometry right there. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to go to edge select, hold Alt, select here. So by holding Alt, I was able to select the entire edge. I'm now going to press R to rotate on the X axis. And I'm trying to get this to be like a regular looking line is what I'm doing right there. When I say regular, I mean from left to right. Okay, we're going to left click to deselect. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to hover here, hold Control, press R. We're going to, I put a loop cut in, by the way. We're going to left click and then left click again to lock that loop cut in. Okay, with this loop cut still selected, we're going to take our manipulator and push this towards itself. We don't want these lines to cross over, so we're going to press S to scale on the X axis now. You can see that kind of like brings this, evens out that center area there. So now I'm taking a look at everything. Okay, I'm going to hold them the mouse button. I'm going to press S to scale on the y-axis, or rotate on the x-axis. Push this forward some, like that. Right here, this piece of geometry right here, I'm going to hover here, hold Control, press R to put a loop cut in. Then I'm going to left click once, then left click a second time to lock that loop cut in. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, we're going to go to Edge Select. We'll push this down some to round that out some. We'll select here. Here's in the back, towards the back. We'll push that up some. For here, we're going to left click here, hold Shift. While holding Shift, select there. We have these two edges selected. We're going to press S to scale on the y-axis like that. Then we'll press R to rotate on the x-axis. Press S to scale like that. Okay, with that done, we're going to left click to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to the upper left, select face select, press C for paint select, select all of this geometry here, right click to get out of paint select, then press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. Once we do that, we're going to go to the upper left, go to edge select, select these two edges here. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, pull this out to the side, then push this down some. And basically what we're doing is we're pulling this out so we can set up geometry to work on the hips. So with this done, we're going to go to select here, hold Shift, still holding Shift. We selected these three edges, and I think we can press F to fill. Yes, we can. So we're going to do the same thing here. Left click here, hold Shift. I'm holding Shift so I can select more than one edge at a time, still holding Shift. Then I'm going to press F to fill. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure we're on edge select, which we are. We're going to hold Alt and then left click this whole edge right here. And we have this selected so we can extrude the legs down. So we're going to press E to extrude. And then we're going to right click. So we made new geometry, even though it doesn't look like we did anything. We're going to take our manipulator and then push straight down, right? This is forming the top of the legs. We want to push this forward now like that. These legs are pretty close to each other, so we want to pull these to the side like that. See how this is kind of like bunching up together? So what we can do is push this down even further. Then we can press S to scale on the Z-axis and then 0 to straighten those out. Okay, what we want to do now is make this into a circular shape, right? Now we can manually do this. I want to be clear about this. You can manually do this. You go to vertex select and just make the vertices go in a more circular shape. However, there's an easier way to do this. And what that is, if you go to add-ons, you go to preferences. What did I say? Well, you go to your edit preferences, then you go to add-ons, right? When you look in your add-ons list, I'm scrolling down. What I'm looking for is loop tools. See this mesh loop tools? Make sure you have a check mark here. And then what that allows you to do is with this edge selected, now what I can do is I can right click. This menu pops up. I can go to loop tools and then I can select circle. And then automatically the legs are placed in a, made more circular. It's very useful. However, you can look, like, see how this, this particular vertex is here. Just if you wanted to manually do this, or if your loop tools, you're having some kind of issue, you would just manually set up the shapes like this. So the two vertices here, these ones going in there, and just have this basic shape. So I'm going to go back to the upper left, go to edge select. I'm going to push this forward slightly more, bring this up some like that. Bring this out to the side more like that as well. Okay, with these edges selected, what we can do is I'm going to roll the mouse wheel, zoom back. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click. I'm going to push the extrusion down. I'm going to press S to scale, like this, right? And what you want to do as you come down, extruding these legs down, you want to go from front to the side. So here on the side, I'm going to go to the upper left-hand side, go to view, go to viewpoint, and then go to right. I want to pull this back some. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y-axis some as well. I'm going to go back to the front. Remember, we can adjust the proportions after we have the basic shape in. We're going to press E to extrude, right-click. We're going to bring this, which is basically the knees down, right? You want to go to the side. You want to bring this back. Now, when you bring this line back, make sure this line is going back slightly past right here for your knees. So now we're going to, I'm holding shift as well as the middle mouse button in the pan. We're going to press E to extrude again, right click. We're bringing the calf area basically down. We're going to press S to scale on the X axis like this. Same thing, you want to go to the side. Here on the side, you want to press S to scale on the Y axis like this. See how this line here goes past the knee? You don't want that, so you're just going to pull this back so that's not past the knee. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis. More. Again, you don't want this going past there, so you pull that back. So now we're going back towards the front like this. Okay, so we're going to press E to extrude, right click, and then push this down like this. Same thing, we're going to press S to scale on the X axis like this. Now this time we want to press S to scale on the Y axis to bring this in like that. We'll pull this up some like that. We go back towards the front. We'll press S to scale on the X axis like that. We'll press E to extrude, right click, and then come down like that. Just holding the mouse button to take a look. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back just so we can see our whole character mesh so far. Okay, I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan up. I'm going to push this down further like this. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. I do that to get a smooth zoom rather than rolling the mouse. With this edge here selected, I'm going to hold control. I'm going to press F. This brings up our faces menu. I'm going to go to grid fill. I do not want this. So what I can do is go to this to the side. There we go. That's what I want. So I want this to be... There we go. That's what I want. So I want the line to be going to the front and then the other line to be going to the side. So I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what I'm going to do now is hover here. I'm going to hold control, press R to put a loop cut in. I'm going to left click once. Because I left click one time, I can move that loop cut. So I'm moving that loop cut down to about there. I'm going to left click to lock that loop cut in. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hover my mouse here. I'm going to hold control, press R to put another loop cut in. I'm going to left click once. Because I left click one time, I can move the loop cut. I'm going to move this up like that. Now I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go to phase select. I'm going to press paint select, paint all this right here, and then right click to get out of paint select. I'm going to hold them the mouse button and rotate this side. Just getting a good view so I can come forward. Actually, I want to flatten this geometry out as well. So I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis 0, and that just made the geometry flat. I'm now going to press E to extrude, right click. I made the new geometry. It doesn't look like I did anything, but now I can push this geometry out like that. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to hold, well, I'm going to left click first this top edge, zoom in. The manipulator's in the way, so I'm going to go to the upper left, select this select box to get rid of the manipulator, hold shift, then select there, let go of shift, and then go back to the move tool. All that things I just said were just to get this out of the way temporarily. So I could push this down like that. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Push this down more. I'm going to left click here, hold shift, pull this out, left click there. Now I'm holding shift again. Push this over. You want to try to have these be even. Now what I'm going to do is left click on nothingness to deselect, hover here, hold control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that in, left click on nothingness to deselect, hold the middle mouse button, rotate, select here, hold shift, just so I can select both edges and then push this down like this. I'm also going to hover here, hold control, press R to put another loop cut in. I'm going to left click once, then left click a second time to lock that in, then left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. We'll go to edge select, we'll hold shift, we'll push this out, something like that. We'll zoom back. Like I said, we can adjust the proportions later on. Don't let that get to you for now. We'll select here. We'll push this down like this. Let's back some. Push this in, something like that. Pull that out some. We'll select here, as well as here. Push this down some. What you want to think about here is we're going to extrude the arm from around here. So we're basically trying to set up things to prepare the arm to be extruded. So I'm selecting this in the front. I'm basically what I'm doing here is I'm adjusting the shape. I'm looking at it and I'm seeing what's there, what looks like it should come forward. So that's what I'm doing here. And again, I'm thinking of the arm coming out here. So we're going to go to face select, select here. We're going to press S to scale on the Y axis like this. We're going to left click to deselect. Okay, we're going to hold the mouse button, rotate the view. We'll press C for paint select. We'll select here, right click to get out of paint select. What we're going to do is press E to extrude and then right click. We'll bring this out like this. This part right here, what we want to do is rotate. So we're going to press R to rotate on the Y axis. And we want to bring this part above this edge right here, right? Like this. Then we're going to press R to rotate on the Y axis. The reason why we're doing this is going to be basically our shoulders. Our arms are actually going to come out from here. So I'm pressing R to rotate on the Y axis. So think of somebody like putting their arms out to the side. So that's what we're setting up here. Press R to rotate on the Y axis. R to rotate on the Y axis. There we go. So we want the arm to come out here, right? See this big long part? So what we can do is we'll left click to deselect. We'll hover here. We'll hold control, press R, then left click once, because we only left click once. We can move this loop cut. We'll move this down. So now we'll have the arm come from here. So now we're going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to go to face select, press C for paint select. I'm going to press the O key to turn on the proportional editing tool. I'm going to press G and then Y. just to pull this back. Something like that. I'm going to left click to deselect, press O to turn the proportional editing tool off. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view, press S to select these faces here. We're going to press E to extrude, right click, we made new geometry. We're going to drag this new geometry out like this. We want to flatten this out, so we're going to press S to scale on the X axis 0 and then left click to lock that in. Okay, we want to make this circular, so we're going to right click, go to loop tools, and then select circle. Then we're going to press S to scale this down some, like that. Just hold the middle mouse button to take a look. Okay, what we're going to do is press E to extrude, right click, and then extrude out like that. Okay, we're going to press E to extrude, right click, bring extrude out like that, or we pulled the extrusion out. We're going to press S to scale. We're going to form now. E to extrude, right click, bring this out. We're going to scale down like that. Okay, I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. With this area here selected, what we're going to do is press E to extrude, right click. So think of this as the wrist, right? We're going to extrude two more areas. So we're going to press E to extrude, right click. This is going to be part of the hand. Then we're going to press E to extrude and then right click. This is also going to be part of the hand. We're going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what we want to do now is make sure we're on face select, which we are. We're going to select the top faces here, holding shift to select both of them. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis 0, then left click to lock that in. I held the middle mouse button so I can see the bottom of this geometry. I'm holding shift because I want to, this is in the way, this manipulator, so I'm just going to select to the upper left, hold shift, then go back to the upper left and go back to the move tool. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis 0 and then left click to lock that in. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to select this face here. We're going to press E to extrude, right click. We're pushing this out. And basically what we're setting up here is for our fingers to be able to come out. We're going to press E to extrude, right click. We made new geometry even though it doesn't look like we did anything. And then we just pull this geometry to the side like that. So you want these spaces here to be about, you know, don't have to be exactly the same size, but generally the same size. I'm going to, yeah, there we go. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to show you this technique of making fingers. It works well. It's fairly quick. And what it does is it works by taking advantage of Blender's pivot point as well as a certain kind of extrusion mode. So we're going to go to the upper middle part of the screen. We're going to left click on our pivot point selection. Blender's default pivot point is the medium point. What we want to do is select individual origins. Okay, so with our pivot point set to individual origins, with our face select on the upper left-hand side selected, we're going to press C for paint select. We're going to select these four faces here. We're going to right click. So I'm holding the mouse button just to make sure we only have these faces here selected. Okay, typically when we extrude, if we pressed E right here, this entire, normally before we set up this individual origins, as well as the next step we're about to do, if we press extrude, this block would come out. There wouldn't be individual faces extruding. And that's what we want to make fingers. So with this setup, with the individual origins, we're going to use a special type of extrusion. We're going to hold Alt, then press E. When we do that, our extrude menu pops up. So we're going to select extrude individual faces. So we're going to left click, right click, and then with that done, what we're going to do is we're going to press S to scale down. And you can see we're scaling down these individual faces, right? Just slightly. Now we pull out these individual faces, right? So hopefully you can see that. Let me hold shift as well as the middle mouse button. The pan. So now we have these separated faces. So now what we're going to do is press E to extrude. I'm going to right click. So here is the first part of our fingers. We'll press E to extrude again, right click. There's like the other part of the fingers. We'll press E to extrude again, right click. And there we go right there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select here. This being that finger, hold shift, then select there. And then I'm going to push this back slightly. Just because these two fingers tend to be longer. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Edge Select. Okay, with Edge Select on, we want to select this. It would be an edge loop, but because this is so blocky, we can't hold Alt. Normally, Alt won't work for us, so we're just going to hold Shift. Okay, I let go of Shift. I'm going to select box just to move the manipulator out of the way. I'm rotating just to get to the other side, so I held the middle mouse button to do that. Now I'm trying to select the underside. So now we have basically a loop selected. Okay, so with this loop selected, what we want to do is take our manipulator and just push this back, just like that. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to hold Control in the middle mouse button to do a smooth zoom. Okay, what we're going to do now is we want to add more geometry. So we're going to hover here, hold Control. While holding Control, press R. We have this loop cut going right down the arm. We're going to left click once, left click a second time to lock it in, then left click on nothingness to deselect. Holding the mouse button just to take a look. Okay, I'm going to left click here, push this out like this. Now I'm going to go to the face select. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, bring this out. I'm going to press S to scale on the X-axis. There we go, like this. Push that back some. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, bring this out. E to extrude, right click, then bring that out like that. Then I'm going to press S to scale like this. Edge select. Clicked over there just to move the manipulator. Okay, let's make sure we turn our pivot point away from individual origins, which is currently set for, back to the medium point, which is the default pivot point in Blender. Okay, we'll zoom back, take a look. Let's adjust the proportion of the head somewhat. The head looks very small, so we'll go to View, Viewpoint, and then Front. So when you look to the left, you can see we're in the front orthographic position. Okay, what we're going to do is go to Face Select. We're going to press Z. Then go to wireframe, hold Control. While holding Control, I'm going to hold the right mouse button. This is a lasso select. I'm selecting around the head. So at the head and the neck area, I'm going to press C, then hold in the middle mouse button, which allows me to deselect that geometry there. I'm now going to press Z, go back to solid view. Now I'm going to hold Control, then press I. So I had the head selected. Now I have everything but the head selected. So what I'm going to do is press S to scale. Now, because we have a mirror modifier on here, that's why the body's spreading out. You just push this in like this. And this is just a fairly easy way to get the head closer to the body. It's pretty easy to adjust proportions in Blender. The getting the basic shapes is the more difficult thing. Adjusting the proportions is fairly easy. Okay, I'm going to press Z, go to wireframe again, hold Control, hold the right mouse button to draw it lasso, select. I'm going to press Z, go to solid view, push this down slightly like that. Okay, what I'm going to do now is roll the mouse wheel in, hold shift as well as the mouse button to pan the view. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to hold alt and then left click right here. So I selected this entire edge. What I'm going to do now is press R to rotate on the X axis like this. So you can see I've rotated that edge up like that. I'm going to left click to deselect and zoom back to take a look. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to, with edge select on, hold Alt, press R to rotate on the X axis here, like that. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to select here these one edge. So because of the mirror, we have two selected. We're going to push this down like this. We'll select here. We'll push this down as well. We'll select here these two edges here, push this down like that, push this in. So I'm going to select these two edges here. And taking a look. I'm going to hold control, press R to put another loop cut in. I'm going to left click once, bring this loop cut down to about here, like that. Just going to straighten this out, pulling this. I went to vertex select. I'm just pulling that vertex up. I got to edge select, push this in some like that. Push this down. Left click to deselect. Okay, we're going to go to face select. We're going to zoom in. We're going to press C for paint select. Select these 8 faces here. Hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. Select the faces slightly to the side there. We're going to press E to extrude. Right click. Press S to scale. Geometry starts to bunch up here, so we're going to push in just to spread that geometry out. I'm going to go with face select on. I'm going to select here. I'm going to push this forward. I'm trying to emphasize the rib cage. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to pull up more here like that. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hover here. I'm going to hold control, press R to put a loop cut in. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. I'm going to hold Alt, then press S. This is a special kind of scale that makes things thicker, expands out. I'm going to hold Shift and then move my mouse up to expand that up and out. I'm going to go right here. I left clicked on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold Control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that loop cut in. I'm going to hold Alt, press S, hold Shift for fine selection and move my mouse up to expand out like there. Let's zoom back and take a look. Okay, what we're going to do is zoom in. I'm going to hold control, press R, put a loop cut in the neck. We are going to hold Alt, select this loop here, press H to hide that. We're going to hold Alt to select this loop here, press H to hide that. The reason why we're doing that is we want to control where we're selecting at. So we're doing the same thing here. So what we want is this geometry right here. So with that face select on, I'm going to hold Alt, select here. We selected this entire loop here without the geometry going to where I don't want it to go, which is up here or over there. So anyway, we're going to press E to extrude and then right click. We're going to press S to scale this down some. That scaling down brings this line away from this line here. We're going to push this towards itself. Be careful you don't have these lines cross over, right? We're going to press S to scale on the X axis like this. And see, this is what I mean. So this crossed over. See this? So I'm going to select there, go to vertex select. There we go. So now we'll turn that back on. Yeah, you don't want that to happen. Okay, so I'm going to go to face select, press L. Actually, I'm going to go to vertex select. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to go to smooth vertices. So now these are a lot more evened out, right? And then what we can do is hold Alt, press S, and then bring that back up some. So when I held Alt and S, I did a special kind of scale, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to hold Control, put a loop cut here. Hold Control, put 2 loop cuts here. 2 loop cuts there. Loop cut here. We're basically evening out the geometry. We'll go to face select. We're going to select here. We're going to press O to turn on the proportional editing tool, then press S to scale this up. Pull this out to the side, something like that. Press S to scale that up. Then what I'm going to do is press E to extrude, right click, press, I want to press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. I'm going to press S to scale this down. So now I'm going to left click to get out of there, hold Control, while holding Control, press R, put a loop cut there, left click to select, to lock that loop cut in, go to face select, press C to select these 4 faces. If I'm going fast, you can always use YouTube's ability to slow down the video. I'm going to right click. I am going to go to loop tools and then circle to make this circular. I'm going to press R to rotate that. I'll press S to scale this down some. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale that down. Push this out some, though, like that. Press E to extrude, right click, scale that down. Push this out some, like that. I'm going to go to the edge select here. Push this, oops, I meant to say push forward, there we go. Like that. We should be able to press C for paint select. Select there, press O to turn on the proportional editing tool, press G, and then bring this forward like this. And we'll adjust these things later on. Like we can go to edge select. We need to turn off proportional editing. We'll push this up like that. We'll hover here, hold Control, press R. We're going to hold Alt, then press H to bring back that previously hidden geometry. Zoom back to take a look. I know it looks strange again now. Okay, there's a couple things we want to do. We're going to want to go to our upper left, go to View, down to Viewpoint, go to Front. We want to make sure we're in a front orthographic view. If you look to your upper left, you can see that. We're going to press Z so we can go to Wireframe. We're going to press B for Box Select. Before I do this, we want to make sure we're on Face Select. So B for Box Select. You want to select the hands, the head, as well as the feet. I missed this area right here, so I'm going to press C for there. Okay, now we're going to press Z, go back to solid view. We selected these areas because what we want to do is we want to, just making sure we have the correct areas. These are areas that we don't necessarily want to be affected when we use a smooth modifier. Smooth modifier helps a lot when you're working with sculpting, as well as when you're working with box modeling like we're doing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the right. We're going to go to, looks like a triangle with circles on it. We're going to go to vertex groups. We're going to go to the right, select plus. This makes a new vertex group. We're going to name this protect. I did that just by double clicking on here. We're going to select assign. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to, over in the viewport here, we're going to hold Control, press I. We're going to make another group. We're going to go to the right, select plus. We'll name this main body. We're then going to select assign for this as well. So I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. So let's go to protect and then go to select. So this selects. Now I left clicked on nothingness to deselect. We'll go to main body, select. So this is good. So long story short, the reason why we did this is we basically made groups. So we could just select these. Having these groups allows you to select things easily. It also allows you to be able to choose what you want to be affected by different modifiers. So that's why we made them. So we're going to zoom back. Something else that I want you to be aware of is that this current character right here is extremely low. We do have a mirror modifier on it. However, if you look below my mouse, you can see the triangles are 1,138. This is extremely low poly. Also, the head, the way it's set up here, is set up in a way where it's ready to go if you want to do my normal box modeling head technique. So before we do this next step, you might want to select the head, and you would just, select the entire head, very similar to how we selected it before, and you would just duplicate this head. Just put it off to the side if you wanted to do that. We're about to increase the geometry, so that's why I'm saying these things. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our upper left. We're going to go to object mode. Okay, one of the advantages of box modeling over sculpting is when you box model, typically you're left with generally good topology, so you don't normally have to retopologize. When you sculpt, I find you get better results from sculpting. However, you do have to retopologize, which takes a lot of time. So if you're limited for time, a lot of times it's good to box model. And one of the things that's good about box modeling is you tend to have a lot of control of your polygons, and you tend to have low polygons. So right now, this is about 1,000 polygons, and we're about to increase the geometry. Now, even when we increase the geometry, this will take up our character to about 10,000 polygons, which is still fairly low. Okay, so that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to go to what looks like our wrench to the side. We're going to go to it looks like a downward arrow. We're going to go to subdivision surface. So we have this subdivision surface modifier on here. We're going to click this little triangular to the bottom right. Where we see render, we're going to take this to 1, viewport to its own 1. We'll leave that to 1. We'll take the quality to 1 as well. Okay, by adding this geometry, we're able to work with the we're able to work with this geometry more like a sculpt that gives us more control over the general body shape. What we're going to do now is we're about to apply the mirror as well as the subdivision surface so we can go in and sculpt this character. So when we're sculpting with box modeling, we're not adding geometry. We're just manipulating the geometry that's there right now. Be aware that the groups that we made, even though we did this with the mirror modifier, will still remain on here, and that's what we want to happen. So we are most of the way through this tutorial now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to right click on our character. We're going to select Shade Smooth. We are now going to go to our upper left hand corner. We're going to go to Sculpt mode. Here in Sculpt mode, I find that it tends to be easier to work using a matte cap. If you don't know what matte caps are, if you look to while you're on the viewport shading, if you click this arrow here, you can see we have Studio, Matte Cap, Flat. The Studio is default. When we left click on Matte Cap, now what we can do is left click here. And then we can select one of these matte caps. And these matte caps tend to work well on different things. This tends to work very well when it comes to sculpting. If you're like, well, how does that work? Well, it works well by it allows you to see the shading tends to be better. So maybe not better. You're able to work better as far as the shading. It allows you to work easier, I find. Okay, so even though we're in sculpting, a lot of times with sculpting, you'll add geometry. We're just using the sculpt mode to manipulate the geometry here. The sculpt mode, be aware that the sculpt mode, even though we don't have a mirror modifier on this, the sculpt mode, if you click on the top button to the right and then look down, see the symmetry? The sculpt mode by default is set up in a sense like having a mirror modifier. So what we do to this side will be done to the other side. If you didn't want that, you could turn this off. However, for now, we do want this. And when I say turn this off, I mean this X button right here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is let's zoom into our character. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. We're going to work on the chest area. We'll go to Inflate. We're going to press F. When we press F, we can make our brush bigger or smaller. So we're just increasing the size here. So you want to be careful when you start increasing the size. Make sure you turn to the side. I'm just holding the middle mouse button to do that. We're going to go to the grab brush. Pull this down. This actually works easier from the side here. Press F. Okay, when we're sculpting, I tend to, a second. I tend to like there's a lot of different brushes here. The main brushes that we'll use is the grab brush, the inflate brush, the blob brush, the crease brush, possibly the scrape brush as well. They all have different things that they're good for. I tend to like the blob brush a lot. The blob brush allows you to increase geometry very quickly. Okay, as we work our way through this, we're kind of going to overdo a lot of features, and we'll overdo the features because we're most likely going to use a smooth modifier, which will bring the features in. So just be aware of that. So the first thing we're going to do is we have this abdominal region right here. We're going to build this up. So I'm currently selected on the blob brush. So I'm just going to left click and drag straight down like that. We're going to increase the thigh area here. So we're just going to drag down like that. We'll go to the side like this. Holding the middle mouse button, or I held the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Same thing here. What you want to do here is not just make like a ball here. You want to actually kind of pull from the top here. Be aware of what you're doing by looking to the side. I'm going to press F to shrink my brush. Bring up the geometry there. The hamstring area. Zoom back. The blob brush you have to be careful with, but I like being able to just do like a stroke and then having that change. A very quick change. Okay, we're going to go to the grab brush. Zoom in here. Pulling this out to the side some. See, like this crease here, we can actually have this go up. So you want to pull up like this. Okay, we're going to go to the blob brush. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm holding control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. That gives you a smooth zoom. So if you roll the mouse, you'll zoom. If you hold control and then hold the middle mouse button and move the mouse up or down, you'll get a smoother zoom. I'm going to press F to decrease actually the size of the brush. I'm going to hold control. So I'm holding control and I'm just putting a dent towards like the front of where the elbow should be at. I'm going to go to the knee and just bring out the knee some. So I'm using a blob brush to do that. Holding control as well as the middle mouse button to get a smooth zoom. I'm doing the same thing on the back of the elbows. Just have the blob brush on. I'm not holding control. I'm just letting it do its regular thing. Taking a look at this. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to go to the grab brush. Increase the width of the back slightly. We're going to go to the crease brush to try to put in the area where the spine's at. So you want to go from the back of the crease brush, basically puts creases in things. So we only have so much geometry. So like if you're using the crease brush and you're like, you know, I don't really see anything, we only have so much geometry. So let's go to the blob brush. You can increase the strength. So the strength is set for 500. I'm going to take this all the way up to 1. Shrink this down more. We're going to hold control. Holding control. Let's go back to the crease brush. We'll take this strength up to 1. See what this does. You don't hold control here. If we were actually sculpting, we could increase the geometry. But we are manipulating the geometry that is there right now. So I'm going to take the crease, see if we can, that worked out well. Fairly well. Just held the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold them the mouse button to rotate the view. Let's go to the grab brush. I'm just taking a grab brush to pull the neck forward some. Looks very thin. Okay, so now we can do some just general adjustments. We have, for the most part, our base female mesh. So right here, I'm just making the waist a little thinner, and I'm just adjusting the back there. Now, what I was saying before, like once you have your basic proportions, it's fairly easy to change those proportions around once you have the basic work done. I held shift. When you hold shift in sculpting mode, you automatically go to the smooth brush. So where's that smooth brush at? There we go. So this is the smooth brush. And when you hold shift, you automatically go to the smooth brush. So what we're going to do now is go back to object mode. We're going to go to our Okay, I thought we had applied this already. Surprised we were able to work with this like it is. So you have the modifiers here, right? So I would recommend you would go to Shift D, duplicate your model, right? I press Shift D to duplicate, and I move my mouse to the side. I didn't push anything else. Now I'm going to right click. That duplicate jumps back into place. I'm going to press M and then new collection, right? There's new collection 2. I'm going to select OK. So that duplicate is in a new collection 2 right here. So I'm going to hide that collection. So if we want to have the modifiers, if we need these modifiers back, because I'm about to apply them, we can get those modifiers back by our duplicate kit of this model that's in the collection 2. So for this model that is not the one we just duplicated, I'm going to select Apply All. So when we go to our geometry, we can see we have nice even geometry. It's low poly. We're underneath 10,000 triangles. We also can very easily, the way this is set up, we can very easily set this up to put UV maps on it so that we can texture it. If you also could use this as a base mesh, like if you wanted to keep going with your sculpting, you could also continue on and then sculpt with this base mesh. I'm going to go to the upper left and then go back into object mode. Okay, something else you can do is you can go to add modifier. So we're on the, looks like a wrench, the modifier tab. You go to add modifier. You go to the smooth modifier, right? You take this factor. You can either drag it up or type in 1. And then for this factor, you can take this factor up and you can smooth your model down, right? Now, when you do this, the hands will be affected as well as the head. I'm going to select these options here. These make it look like the modifiers applied. However, remember the vertex groups we made. So if I take this hand up more, the hand is affected more and more. However, if we go to this vertex group, we can select main body. So now the hand as well as the head as well as the feet are unaffected as we work with this smooth modifier. Then you can select this modifier and determine how much you want this to be smoothed out. So I'm going to left click on apply. Okay, something else you should be aware of. If you want a base mesh, one of the things you can do to adjust your mesh easily is you can go to, looks like a triangle with circles on it. You can look to where we see these shape keys, select plus, and then select plus again. And then what you can do in here is you can go to, looks like attack. You can select this. Now what we can do is you can go to sculpt mode, right? And then here in sculpt mode, you can adjust your mesh. So I'm going to adjust the hip slightly. Be careful when you're adjusting the extremities, like your arms and things like that, but you can adjust the shape of things, right? You can, improve things or make things the way how you would like them to be. More, you can do big changes or small changes. And then what you can do is you'll go to the upper left, go to object mode, right? Go back over to your shape keys, take off that pen. So now what you have is when you take this setting and move this up, you can see the changes you have. So you could have this base mesh and then have shape keys for each base mesh and basically adjust your the body type for your simple female character mesh around very easily. To have your shape key be the actual final shape, all you would do is you would select your basis, and then you would select the minus button, and then you would select the minus button again, and then this current shape you're looking at is an adjusted shape key shape. However, this would be the final mesh if you did that technique. Okay, I'm going to take a look at these shapes. I do like the shape key better, so I'm going to go to basis, select the minus button, and then minus again. So now this is our final shape. Okay, hopefully you can see from this, now you know how to make a basic female mesh, and you could, take this from here, and hopefully this tutorial worked out well for you. Hopefully you learned a lot from this tutorial. And, I appreciate you making it to this point in the tutorial. Okay, guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.